see, during the course of a day, my team and I all have to make sure that our certifications are maintained, that we have people getting trained, that we're reporting to the audit committee correctly. Well, that slows down our ability to identify, contain, control, and communicate an incident. And what's fascinating about this is the bad guys, whether they're organized crime or, again, nation state, they don't have a board to answer to. If they kill someone in the process of shutting down a hospital's services, they don't care. There's not a single regulator that says, "Oh, you can't do that." So the barrier for them to accelerate is significantly less than my ability to keep up with them.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of 401 Access Denied. This is your podcast brought to you by both Cybery and Delinea, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm your host for today's episode, Joseph Carson, and I'm the Chief Security Scientist and Advisory CISO at Delinea. I'm really excited about today's topic. It's a very important topic and one that probably many of you out there have been really waiting for. And this topic, we're going to be basically joined with two awesome guests. It's our first time on the show. And I would like to pass it over to Stan. So, Stan, would you tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and some of the fun things you get up to in InfoSec?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. So my current role is I'm the CISO at Delinea. Prior to that, I was an executive or CISO or CSO and a CIO. Remind me not to do that one again. For Citrix, for a company called Nuance, and then I was a security executive inside the what used to be the EMC family of products, VMware, RSA. And a little bit about my background is I've cut across much of the path of security. So transferring or evolving from a standard or what I would call a rudimentary CISO of just IT security, that progressed along to product and software security, because as I noted, all the companies I work for are technology companies. So I delved deeper and deeper into that area, as well as physical security. So guns, guards, and gates, can't get enough of those. And then that just keeps evolving into risk-based mindset. So
Mhm.
it's been an interesting ride. Lots of bad folks out there, and lots of smart folks trying to keep the bad folks out.
Absolutely. I think one of the things, when I was in an event last week, somebody compared us to almost like, the Marvel team of superheroes. We're all out there to try and protect the world against all the evil that's there. So
That's right.
it was quite an interesting conversation. But Stan, welcome to be here and really excited. And absolutely, it's right. It's all about risk. Risk is the fundamental kind of area that we focus on. I'm also joined with another awesome guest. So, Tony, welcome to the show. If you can tell us about yourself and what you do and some of the fun things you get up to.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joe, and hello, Stan. Yeah, Tony Goulding here. I've been with the company. Actually, we're a merged company, but I've been doing what I'm doing in product marketing now for about 6 or 7 years. Kind of externally, I'm a cybersecurity evangelist. Doing a lot of talking and consulting about cybersecurity. Kind of internally, I'm technical product marketing, so doing a lot of white papers and webinars and positioning and strategy and all of that kind of stuff. Very exciting. I love that stuff. But you'll probably tell from the accent, I'm from another country, although this is multinational. So what does that mean? But I'm from Wales, originally born and bred in Wales. But I've been in the industry too many years. I've been in it, probably the security industry over 20 years. And kind of started off life as a programmer. So I've been down that path. I spent about 10 years programming. So getting a good feel for what people are writing and also the kind of security bugs that can be introduced very easily into software. But I would say that over the 20 years, I focused mostly on vendor solutions. So I've worked for vendors. I worked for a company that many of you may have heard of, kind of CA Technologies, if you remember eTrust, the security
Absolutely.
solutions
I remember CA.
around
Yeah.
eTrust. Exactly.
Was it?
Now part of
Reseller to
Broadcom.
consultant.
Yeah, exactly. So I was knee deep in that when the eTrust brand was originally developed. I joined them as a senior consultant, peddling that software as working with the sales teams, trying to get that thing ingrained into people's minds and heads and IT infrastructure. So I've been in the IAM space and the PAM space for around 20 years. Still enjoying it. It's still a great place to be. So.
Absolutely, this is a fun industry to be in. Just curious, so what programming languages were you doing?
Oh
When
my
you,
word!
I'm
You
just
ask.
so
I've programmed in. Well, I started off down in the guts of machine code. So I
okay.
started off at the machine code level, but then kind of went a little bit further up the stack. I did Ada, I did
Hmm.
Pascal, I did Fortran, COBOL, C Sharp, and then many years later, about 10 years ago, years after I'd finished programming, my daughter said, "Hey, why don't you write an iPhone app?" And I'm like, "Okay." So that was my first introduction to actually kind of MVP type of programming, and that was fun. I actually wrote and published an iPhone app. So
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And I think some of those languages, the really important part of this is their foundational languages. A lot of what we do today
exactly,
is still
yeah,
built on top of them, which is really important.
that's very true.
So we're
That's very
here
true.
to talk about a very important topic, and that is that not so long ago, the latest Verizon data breach investigation report has come out, the 2022 edition, which is the 15th year that this report is running, which is quite impressive. And I think they really did this time. They took a bit of a celebratory kind of action where they really wanted to celebrate the past 15 years, which I thought was great. I thought it was really kind of interesting. But when you think about it, I mean, over 15 years, and it's really evolved, especially the last, I think, 3 to 4 years, it's really evolved because they really changed the way they've done reporting and analytical into the presentation of it has really evolved. I struggled with the change between how they display the graphs to try and really understand the concept, but I'm
Right.
starting to now as they mature it much more and they get better at kind of presenting it. I definitely think it's moving in the right direction because it's becoming more actionable. And for all
Mhm.
security professionals, this is really almost, it's the pulse of the industry. It's oh, is it time to have a glass of champagne and say, the past year has been something we've been good at, and we've been defeating, or is it something that we should, raise concerns and think that, there's things and areas that we must do better at. So, Stan, I'll pass over to you. Is there a specific area that you thought in the latest report that may have been interesting, or any observations in the style or updates in the report itself?
Well, I actually enjoyed because I've been reading this since the first edition. That is a bad indication of my age, but it's gone from an academic and an
Mhm.
awareness and concept perspective. It's getting closer to practical.
Yeah.
Um, and I did enjoy the 15-year victory lap. I thought that was
Exactly.
great. I mean, because when you look at that, those of us who have been in the trenches for so
Mhm.
long, before it was called cybersecurity, right?
Yeah. It's called security.
It- exactly. Or information security or MIS. So no, it's really evolved quite a bit. Um, I've had a perception for a good number of years that if if I were to try to pull, if I were someone to ask me who doesn't know anything about this report in the industry, what did I pull out of it?
Mhm.
I would distill it into the following sentence: without access, incidents do not occur. Whether that's an administrator improperly
Mhm.
implementing a patch, or an insider making a mistake or doing something malicious, or a
Mhm.
malicious actor on the outside. So because often we are challenged by
Mhm.
distilling the complexity of our industry into sound bites.
Mhm.
And we've seen in the news that sound bites can get you in trouble. And in my industry and doing and delivering operational security at scale,
Mhm.
oversimplification can get you in trouble. Too much data puts people to sleep, and in brief. So, um, yeah, privilege was an interesting piece of it. I was expecting to see a more inherent invisible shift um, with moving out of the office,
Mhm.
the results of the pandemic.
Mhm.
Um, I was expecting to see a significant increase in mismanagement or error or what have you. But it's funny how the formerly insider is now the outsider
Yes.
because of the pandemic. And when
Yeah.
you look at
Yeah.
statistics, that's exactly
Mhm.
what it evidences. Because if you go back and look at, say, firewall logs from pre-pandemic, there's
Mhm.
all kinds of things bouncing around inside of your enterprise. And now that's decreased dramatically. And now all the noise is coming from the outside. And hopefully you
Absolutely.
get telemetry. So
Absolutely. You bring up an important part because I did take that away as well. Is that what we saw was where insider and internal threats always kind of was had quite a high percentage there.
Mhm.
And what we've seen in the last one, and it's probably because everyone has now been treated as an external
Mhm.
person
Yeah.
because they're accessing remotely, and whether that being with stolen or compromised credentials or whatever it might be, is that yes, everyone has now been treated as external, whether it being employees accessing through VPNs, remote desktop. So you're absolutely right. The question is, and it was notable that this is always retrospective. It's always looking at the past years.
Sure.
And not the current one. So I absolutely think that's a great observation in some of these trends. Tony, just kind of any thoughts from you on that on this or any observations
Yeah,
you?
the numbers were fascinating for me, but some of the takeaways that I got, I don't think I think much of it hasn't changed. It's just variations of the numbers. So certainly the human element was one of the big things that jumped out of me because they were talking about, I think it was like 82% of the breaches. Again, it was the human element involved, right?
Hmm.
And as Stan was saying, but the external actors dominated over the internal actors. And but an interesting blip on that was business partners,
Yep.
vendors, third party contractors. I think they said something like 40% of attacks involved, from an external perspective, involved business partners and vendors. So
Hmm.
so now we're starting to say, okay, so that secure remote external connection into our infrastructure is very, very important to protect, not only for our internal employees whose hygiene is maybe a little less strong in their own sort of home personal networks than it ever was when they were in the office. They're getting attacked more and more, and so we've got to really got to defend that, and the human element is really strong. Another blip, another statistic that jumped out at me, which again, it's something that we've been aware of, but cloud storage misconfigurations, right? They continue to kind of top out the error category in the report. So mistakes by humans that lead to that compromised data in the cloud. That's just the gift that keeps on giving as far as attackers are concerned. And then the big animal, the big elephant in the room, ransomware. And so
Yeah.
I'm tired of hearing about supply chain attacks, but it is top of mind, right?
Hmm.
And ransomware is accounting for the vast majority of all malware breaches, like 70%. But at the end of the day, it's software, and it's not rocket science. It's software, and software needs credentials and elevated rights to do what it needs to do. So that's kind of how we've got to look at that and not be scared of it. It's like, it's software. It needs
Hmm.
elevated privileges. Let's focus on how we can prevent malware and ransomware from getting a hold of those.
Yeah, just to kind of give you some stats as well. So, in the past year, just kind of, so the database investigation team basically analyzed, it was about just under 24,000 security incidents, in which it was 5,212 of those were confirmed data breaches. And it's really always important to understand that
Mm,
um,
right.
in the Verizon data breach, they do have a very clear classification.
Yeah.
A security incident doesn't always necessarily mean a data breach. So they always have the very clear. So just under 24,000 incidents, and then 5,212 of those were classified as confirmed data breaches. Now, just to kind of compare over previous years, this almost is similar to what it was in 2021. So in 2021, it was 5,258 data breaches.
Hmm.
So it's almost comparable to the previous year, where in 2020 it was 3,950. So it means that kind of roughly the same number of data breaches in the past year as of the previous. So and it's also really kind of indicating as well as you mentioned, just to kind of give you some of the statistics as well in regards to it was 62% of the actual intrusions incidents, which basically was access incidents, not necessarily meaning a data breach,
Mm,
actually came through a partner or supply chain. So that's the number of incidents that actually came through suppliers, 62%, which is significant. That's huge. And then you look at 82% of the analyzed breaches in the past year had a human element. And that either human element was either they made a misconfiguration, they made an
right.
error, it was misuse of their privileges that they had. It was through either social engineering attacks. So that's a significant, 82% involved the human aspect of it. One thing that I was thought was quite interesting in previous years, I always used to look at the number of techniques that was used in order to gain access. Normally, it was somewhere between 4 and 5. In the past year, it's decreased to actually the majority of the breaches only required 3 steps. So the
Right,
attacker
right,
only required 3 steps in order to actually carry out the malicious activity. And that either being through a phishing was the step one, to then forcing that machine or person to download some type of malware or ransomware, and then the actually execution of that. So that
right.
really
They want
kind
to
of
be quick, right? They want to be quick and impactful and get in and get out. Because
it used to be
the
very much about
longer the
yes,
chain,
yeah,
it's more opportunity for us to stop them, right? So
Yeah, but
absolutely.
historically, the actors that have come after large enterprises are multimodal. So
Mm,
they'll give you the noisy hack, but what their goal is a secondary low and slow
yeah.
where you barely even see them. They're even cleaning up after themselves. And the partners item, Joe, it
Mm,
related. It's 62%. But think about the world that we live in now too. Many companies that would do the work or bring a vendor internally to solve an operational security challenge,
mm,
you're now pushing out to managed service providers, to just external vendors to drive that. And staff augmentation because hiring is so hard right now, at least in the states, that it's a significant challenge. So we've had to give, or I don't know why I use the word give, but expect our vendors that we are bringing more and more in, that they are trustworthy, and
mhm,
they may be trusted for a period of time, but software and vendors, and it's comes down to back to the human element. Software is written by people. By definition, that will mean it will have vulnerabilities.
mhm,
Infrastructure is operated, maintained, and managed by people. Wetware, let's just call it
yeah.
hardware, software, wetware. And because of that, we have to look at it with a little bit more dynamic lens, and do our threat models that some folks have ignored doing for a period of time, and understanding what our potential attack surfaces may be.
Yeah, and you think about, the last year started with Hefnet, which was the Microsoft Exchange attack. So that's where we started.
Hmm.
Then we had numerous ransomware attacks, specifically on Colonial Pipeline and
mhm.
meat production and others. So again, into different types of supply chains. So not just going through supply, but also impacting supply chains of the physical world.
Right. Yep.
And then we ended the year with Log4j. What you mean? What a scenario of kind of that meant that we've had some significant, especially from software supply,
Hmm.
not just managed services, but also you're using software from
Mhm.
other vendors, and some of those vendors might be large and might have really good patch kind of mechanisms. And some of them, like Log4j, doesn't have patch mechanisms. You might not be
Right.
able to patch it. You still might not have patched it. So this really means organizations really are exposed, especially through the different types of supply chains that's out there.
D-
Yeah, that
Um,
supply chain can be very long, right? It's multiple opportunities for an attacker to break in and cause havoc and basically start the dominoes falling.
Mhm,
And it was prevalent last year, and I think it will continue to be so. Some of the data in the Verizon breach report. I mean, they talk about verticals and different
mhm,
attack methods used in different verticals in different countries. I think the data on the US side is probably more. I think they gave a caution that's saying, we a lot of our data is more clinical. We get more visibility into what's going on within the US data set than we do in others. But the trends are clear. I mean, the whole ransomware and supply chain
mhm,
attack methods are just they're just the gift that keeps on giving. And of course, I
yeah,
think you and I spoke, Joe, about ransomware as a service, for example, and making it easier and easier to set up affiliate models where it's like, hey, I'll give you some money, I'll be an affiliate, give me the software, give me the tools, bang, it's out there. It's
absolutely.
just
It's
too
it's
easy.
and
It's too
and in
easy.
the report they really highlighted. I think one of the key things is that we've really shifted away from these opportunistic types of attacks to more organized crime type of criminal activities.
Organized crime is
And I
so
think this
true.
is where
Yeah.
we really see is organized crime is now becoming the reality. Is that they are
Yeah.
investing in order to actually carry out financial motive types of attacks. They're investing in this area, and it really
Right.
gets
Right.
into specializing, where you've got those who specialize in actually gaining access. You've got those who
Right.
specialize in creating the cryptors, those who even specialize in then using those combinations either through basically ransomware or crime as a service, and then deploying the ransomware. And then you have specialized into basically, because those who might be carrying out the crime may not be native language speakers who the victims located, and they'll hire basically specialized help desks who will basically communicate, show how to get cryptocurrency and how to actually recover data. So this is almost getting into
Yeah.
very much a real kind of, it's a business model for the organized crime.
It
And
is. It
you've got
is.
25% increase in ransomware year over year. And 4 and 5 of the breaches were attributed to organized crime, which is phenomenal. I think in the what the data is kind of
I,
shocking
I kind
when you
of
get into reality.
I kind of have this mental picture in my head of a bunch of hackers getting together with a portfolio and a business plan and presenting this to some investor and saying, help us with the funds necessary to bring on a development team and to bring on a team of individuals that will do target acquisition and work on various channels to do our content distribution and our emailing and figure out how we're going to monetize the data that we eventually compromise. It really is a business for sure.
Well, it's interesting when you think about it because whether it's organized crime or a nation state, see, during the course of a day, my team and I all have to make sure that our certifications are
Mhm,
maintained, that we have people getting trained, that we're reporting to the audit committee correctly. Well, that slows down our ability to identify, contain, control, and communicate an
mhm,
incident. And what's fascinating about this is the bad guys, whether they're organized crime or again, nation state, they don't have a board to answer to. If they kill someone in the process of shutting down a hospital's services, they don't care.
mhm,
There's not a single regulator that says, "Oh, you can't do that." So the barrier for them to accelerate is significantly less than my ability to keep up with them. I have to function within a series of rules and requirements. And now there are at least 350 standards, regs, and laws related to security and
mhm,
privacy around the world. And let's just be clear, they haven't actually solved a single cybersecurity issue, in my opinion. Many companies that are
mhm.
hacked and breached are also compliant, interestingly enough. And
Yes,
now I'm
actually,
seeing
majority of
a
them.
new yeah, well, exactly. I was trying to be nice, and now I'm getting notifications from the FTC that says if you don't patch Log4j, we are going to apply financial ramifications to your company. Never seen that one before. I'm not sure if it's happened elsewhere. And when you look at the report, I want to know where do I, if I'm that person
Mhm,
starting out in on their security career, where do I start?
Right.
It's do
yeah,
you go out to the biggest thing? Or, the report used to be used as a mechanism to get budget in security for
mhm,
security teams. Now it's almost impossible to distill it down to a consumable format that says there are three problems. We're going after this one, this
Right.
one, and this one. The rest,
Right. Right.
we'll worry about them
Yeah.
later.
Right.
yeah.
It's
So
hard.
we had an interesting. I was moderating a panel not long ago that was basically on the hiring side of things, getting people into the industry. And for many organizations, for those who are in the entrance into looking for entry, basically starting point in cybersecurity or info security or wherever it might be, that was actually the job requirements and descriptions for many industry organizations was actually so much higher than that of cybercrime. Cybercrime, they didn't need certifications. They,
Of course not.
they just wanted to show me, some of your previous work, and that was enough to get them in. So some of
Yeah.
the entry levels, it was interesting. It was we had a person that was in who was expertise expert expert was that area of looking at the comparison between entry level into and how to try and get more people who were going down that cybercrime path to get them kind of trained and moved over before they carried out malicious activities. And I think this is something we have to look at here as an industry. And I think something I would like to even maybe when the Verizon data breach investigation team, some of the guys do will listen to the podcast and hopefully they'll take away and say, how do we, what types of kind of job descriptions or requirements or skills do we need to help address these issues that the report's raising? Tie it to the skills gap as well. Because one thing I really liked is what they've done is they've really tied it to the MITRE tech framework. They brought in a risk element in the last couple of years, and that's all fantastic because it really makes it actionable. But as organizations, we need to know what's the skill gap and be able to address these. Then basically to really look at what's the skills we need to bring on board. Where do we need to train people? Where do we need to educate people? What skills, what things we need to outsource to really help us address many of these issues?
Right,
Yeah.
right. I
So
think the
it's really
closest they
amazing.
got to that, to answering that question, I was kind of just browsing briefly looking for this statement, but I think in essence they said there's four main paths that lead to our data.
Mm,
That's lost, stolen, compromised credentials, number one; phishing, which can
mhm.
often result in compromised credentials, as we all know; exploiting vulnerabilities, and botnets. So
Yeah.
that's kind of, we need a solid plan to address them all. That's as close as it got to being prescriptive into what kind of skill sets you need in order to address some of these issues. But yeah, I agree with that. I think that giving more guidance in that
Mhm.
respect would be fantastic.
Well, and the interesting thing when you read a report like this, it fills your head with all kinds of interesting information. But one of the items that I feel as if we've kind of lost track of is
Mhm.
all of the security technology that companies spend huge dollars on and more every year. Why are we putting that in place? The answer is it breaks down to applications that we've developed, operating
Mhm.
systems that we've developed, communication protocols that are now older than my children. You know, they were designed to deliver a information experience, not aware that the world would be weaponizing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that, and so why do you need antivirus and malware and all these other and browser protection? Well, they're designed to let you do anything, and it's up to us as security people to help our our customers and our compatriots solve those issues. And we got to
Yeah.
remember how we got here. And as a some of the new kids coming in don't even know how to access or go to a command line to get to a directory on a hard drive.
Yeah.
I know that's an old guy talking, but really.
No,
So
I was in my terminal this morning on my Mac trying to solve a
yeah,
problem at the command line level.
Mhm.
Why won't
yeah.
So just
sudo let me
yeah,
in?
to your point, Stan, just to give you some also perspective as well, is in the ransomware data itself, almost it was a 40% of the ransomware incidents actually involved using of basically desktop sharing software
Yeah.
that the actually vendor was using themselves or the victim was using. So
Mhm.
the own remote desktop sharing software was used in most of the ransom, almost half.
Yeah.
And then to get into also email, 35%
Mm,
of them were actually using email for distribution. It's still going back to things that if you're able to even just address those areas, you can significantly reduce the risk quite significantly down.
Yeah.
I think it was RDP. One of the stats was around RDP that majority of them through was brute force attacks.
Yeah.
So, and that means that what does brute force attacks means? That we as humans are creating weak passwords. We're
mhm.
leaving it to humans to make the choice in what is a strong password. And I think
Mhm.
that's another area that we really have to start addressing. I really liked. I think the SMB summary really kind of hit it really kind of clear. And in the SMB summary in the report, it gets into providing these 13 steps of what you can do. And I think it doesn't just address. I think when we look at them, it's for all organizations. I think these are the things that SMBs can achieve, but they're probably the basic standards that all organizations should get right, because it only takes one mistake in order to leave yourself at risk. And just to kind of give you, the top four of that 13 was using two-factor authentication. It's just
Mhm.
making sure the password is not the only security control. Make it difficult for the attackers to be successful. Force them to taking more risks. So number two was do not reuse or share passwords. Which the next I get scared because the next generation, that's the culture they've actually been brought into,
Mhm.
is sharing and reusing passwords. And then you get into they do recommend to use a password manager or a password generator that will help create unique passwords. And then the fourth one was be sure to change default credentials, areas like point of sales and other hardware. That was the top four of those 13 steps for SMBs.
Y- Joe, it's funny when you talk about passwords. Remember, I used the term root cause a minute ago.
Hmm.
what company that isn't born in the cloud doesn't have on-premise Active Directory, which
Hmm.
does not have the ability to do three of the items you just called out on
Yep.
passwords alone, right? So when you download the entire hashed directory
Mhm.
password structure of your company, you can find ABC if the company's name is ABC 123 hundreds of times. So when those breaches occur at major hotel chains that are tied to a corporate account, it's literally like marketing your target for the bad guys. And it gives you wonderful
Right.
dynamic
Mhm.
telemetry to be a bad guy targeting a company. And then you look them up on LinkedIn to figure out they're an administrator of such and such.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
It's not hard to do. And the our adversaries are using intelligent systems. They are learning by every
Mhm.
attack and every outcome of every attack.
Yeah, I think if I'm not wrong, Joe, the term is password spraying, right? Where somebody may go to the dark web, you get Tony's identity and a password, and the assumption is Tony's fallible. He's probably using the same ID and password in other places as well. So you spray it at these other systems, hoping that one of them just sticks and lets you in. I mean, it's a common
Yeah.
technique, right?
They
Well,
normally
it's
start with
yeah.
stuffing, then they move to spraying, and then they move to highly targeted once they have their because that noisy attack of stuffing
Mhm.
to sprinkling and so on, and then it becomes more and more fine tuned as they
Absolutely.
go.
It
I
does.
like
It
those
does mean
gardening
yeah.
metaphors, spraying and
Yeah.
sprinkling, and
So
Yeah,
it does get
yeah.
into, the attackers do use a little bit more. There's more automation in this area. So one of the things, when we talk, one of the previous episodes, I had Evil Mug, who is X-Force Red Team's password cracking guru. He's awesome, and amazing. So if you have, for the audience, if you want to know about password cracking, that, go back and listen to that podcast episode. And we do go into, also talking about the passwordless experience is important to emphasize the word there. But we get into one of the things that they do is, Tony, to your point, is they do go and find previously compromised passwords that you have chosen. And there's tons of passwordless. I mean, almost, everyone has been part of a data breach in this planet.
Mhm.
You can't avoid it because there's been so many large data breaches. So somewhere out there is some of your previous password choices. And what they end up doing is they'll take that and they'll create the base word list. And
Mhm.
then they'll understand about what your organization's protection is in place. So, what's your requirements? Is it uppercase, lowercase, the password complexity?
Hmm.
So, once they know your choice of previous passwords, your password policy in regards to the complexity that your password requirements are, and they combine those together, and then they'll put it through basically is a word list cruncher. And
Mhm.
what that will now do is expand that word list to include all the possibilities that you may
Hmm.
have kind of, taken that previous choices and get into the predictable pieces of which your future passwords might be. And then what they'll do is once they've created that word list, now they'll use that as the basis to do basically password spraying.
Now, if they
Um,
applied that to the stock market, then maybe they could predict the outcome of, rises in stock prices. That
I
would be
think they
awesome.
do. I think,
Oh,
I think they
they
do.
probably do.
I
They
mean,
probably do.
Well,
they're already using all of this before.
I don't know if I have a lot of folks that are all playing Wordle now.
Oh my
Which
word!
which
Please.
is exactly what you just described, Joe. What's the most common word? Start there, then
Yeah.
and so it's dictionary. It's still words. It's still
Yep.
dictionaries, and that's why that methodology and the need to use something more aggressive is so
Mhm.
relevant.
Mm.
But now many companies to enable a better user experience and reduce their
Mhm.
help desk calls for password resets have allowed and enabled MFA or
Mhm.
multi-factor self reset. Well,
Mhm.
it's reset via the email that we were just talking about a moment ago.
Mm.
So then you actually give the bad guy an escalated credential, and they have the multi-factor token, and so they're in.
Yep.
So
Mm.
that's exactly the access concept that I was talking about earlier. Where essentially they know our business often better, to your point, Joe, about how people build passwords, most common
Mm.
words, all of that. When we look at this, we have to decompose that and say
Mhm.
we need proper authorization in when enabling our users to have access. We need to enforce things. And so it doesn't need to be hard.
Yeah. Yeah,
It just needs to
email
be
should
manageable.
never be the primary purpose of resetting passwords
The
because what
Iranian, the Iranian funded teams are aggressively going after MFA with large enterprises with
mm,
self-serve models.
yeah. Because I mean
Mm.
email, that's literally if you go to any cloud service application out there, that's basically it might send you a time-based,
Yeah, an
magic
OTP.
token in order to basically reset the password. And if an attacker gains access to your email account,
Right.
they will basically go through and again through that intelligence they will basically do a quick search through your email history and determine all the different services that you've ever signed up for, and then basically go through and automate the password resets of all of those services, and they'll
Hmm.
be able to use their email in order to either
Right.
laterally move into
Right.
your networks, or laterally move vertical up into your cloud environments, and really cause a lot of havoc. So absolutely,
Right. I
be
mean,
really
the
thoughtful of the password reset mechanism and how to verify that the person is really that who
right.
they're claiming to be.
I mean, the Verizon report says quite clearly web and email, mostly along with workstations and laptops, are the top
Yeah,
assets impacted by a breach
Absolutely.
for a reason. For a reason.
And the other thing
I,
here,
I,
what?
honest, I
Go
honestly
ahead.
was surprised to see file sharing so high because
Mhm.
at a if we tie this if we tie the report to a corporate environment from SMB up to the largest enterprise,
Mhm.
in my mind, file sharing should not. It's like having FTP. There's certain things you just don't do.
So
So I didn't understand why it was so prevalent.
yeah, the
And
challenge with file sharing is that a lot of techniques still using today is using techniques like responder that takes advantage of NetBIOS and LMNR poisoning. And what that
Yeah.
really means is that a lot of employees, what they end up doing is when they're on a network, they'll automatically map network drives. So that machine will automatically remember that next time I'm on the network, it will connect to it and have access to those files.
Mhm.
And that's a very common technique that many employees use in order to share data between employees. And what happens is if you're basically on the same network as somebody who's running Responder, your machine will start to basically share your network NTLM hash with that
Yeah.
with that
Back to
that
human error configuration.
attacker. And what
yeah,
ends up happening is if that is a human created password and a human chosen password, it literally becomes again only a matter of time before the attacker is able to go and brute force that. So these are kind of the common steps, and that's why file sharing,
mm,
is so a major challenge and concern there, especially for employees who do travel or work remotely or commonly
yeah.
go to public Wi-Fi access points.
I mean, for a user, it can be hugely convenient. I mean, this morning I was reading the news before I jumped on this, and a major OS vendor whose name shall not be revealed is saying, it's announced a new drop tool to let users share files across their logged in devices and platforms. So that'll be fun, right?
Yeah.
Let's see how well that
And
works.
looking at industries as well, I always kind of zone in the industries, and I think there's no surprise again. I think we're seeing the same industries
Hmm.
pop up. But definitely, with the public administration was again high up there in the number of incidents and breaches. We saw professional industries as well up there.
Hmm.
I think they were top of the list with a number of incidents and breaches. Then we had manufacturing,
Right,
information
right.
organizations, and again finance.
Well, credentials and
Education,
personal data were the
yeah.
main types of data, and there's a lot of
What
that
was
in healthcare
surprising was
systems.
healthcare and education were much lower than I was expecting this time around. I thought they would be industries that would continue to be targeted,
Mm,
but this year they were not as really high up in the list over previous years. So education, it definitely was much lower, and healthcare. Maybe people were a bit more let's say ethical, decided not to target the healthcare industry because it was overwhelmed in the past couple of years.
mm.
Maybe that's an aspect of it, but they were areas that I did note that had didn't have as much incidence as I would expected.
Right.
I think both of those industries, and honestly, all industries, are consuming far more cloud services.
Hmm.
So I think some of that number moving a bit might be how they're getting their
Mhm.
technology or their services delivered to them. because I don't know a single CIO or CISO who wants to buy a piece of hardware, or everybody just wants to buy a reoccurring license in the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah,
that was a
the
there's a key one of my observations in the last year's report. It was the first time. So in 2021, when the Verizon did a breach, it was the first time where actually cloud incidents had overtaken on premise,
Yeah,
which was a massive change. That was a massive, change in the targeting mechanism. So, and that was something that was very interesting that I find is that cloud is now becoming, somewhat the top target in regards to your infrastructure.
right.
And much of that, a lot of it also was driven by digital and data transformations by organizations who were shifting to the cloud because of cost perspectives and
Hmm.
also to
Hmm.
enable remote working. So we did see, of course, organizations unfortunately not take advantage of cloud native security. And what they try
right.
to do is retrofit their on premise security and plug it into the cloud.
Yeah, that
That's
that
where we saw a
retrofitting
lot
is
of
a
misconfiguration because the cloud incidents, a large portion were caused by misconfigurations where security was not, it was enabled, but it had the default settings, meaning that for a lot of those
Right.
EC3 buckets, for example, were publicly
right.
available. Um,
I spoke to a lot of prospects and customers, and lots of themes. Obviously, DevOps was a big one. It's like, well, how do we secure our source code, make sure we're not embedding credentials in there. But along the data transformation, cloud transformation theme, I heard from a lot of companies where they do a typical thing. They'll stand up a new project in the cloud, and they'll prototype something. And during that time, the developers and the ops teams are logging into those instances using local accounts, which is not a good idea. It's increasing your attack surface, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to production and switching those things over into production, they're like, okay, that's not a good idea. Let's get rid of the local accounts. But how do we authenticate our administrators to those using their AD credentials that are on premises? So that
mhm,
whole new hybrid cloud dynamic has them scratching their heads because their legacy protections, their legacy security and PAM solutions don't stretch to the cloud and enable that to happen. And there are ways of doing it, of course, but they're costly and they introduce, opening up firewall
mhm.
ports and standing up AD in the cloud and sort of
It's
different
funny
trust models.
Mhm.
when you look at it. If you're a malicious actor and you're going after as many targets as possible, and you went after individual enterprises, that level of effort is much higher than harvesting a 24-hour a day public facing cloud resource, which was designed and built often by companies that are transitioning to the cloud with the same skills and team members that they've had for X number of years. And I think that many folks, actually, one of the best cloud architects I know is 72 years old, but he always kept up to date. And it's hard when you're heads down solving day-to-day IT operations and
Yep.
security events, et cetera, to keep your skills where you need and to keep up with the cloud services.
Mm,
Joe, you're spot
mhm.
on. Many of the tools to mitigate these risks are built in. You got to turn them on.
You got to know they
Right.
exist, which is
Yeah.
which is the
Yeah.
challenge. And this is one of the things when I talked about as well when the previous panel that I was hosting at a conference, we were talking about that the amount of time that organizations spend on enabling training for their employees is way under what it should be. Because if you want the employee to be able to take advantage of these new, let's say, solutions and architectures and deployment models and delivery models, they need to be trained well to understand how to enable the security correctly. So,
Agreed.
because in our industry, 2 years can put somebody already, their skill sets way behind.
Mhm.
If you don't train them and you don't make sure that their training is allocated sufficiently to make sure you're able to take advantage of the latest security solutions and architectures and capabilities, then you're going to be getting into where that person may only know this stuff that was 4 years ago and may not enable the right features, and therefore at the same time, end up having a misconfiguration that results in data breach.
Well, and as a consumer of security technology, what I would say to that is you're absolutely right. It's often the line item that's most regularly cut
Yep.
because it's expensive to train people. My view on that is I push that to our vendors.
Mhm.
Hey guys, we really like your product. We consider you to be part of our long-term strategy. Help me utilize your technology in ways that
Mm,
we haven't even thought of, and building that into the relationship and the engagement of a
mm.
true partner
You're
as a
That's
vendor.
cool.
spot on, because that's exactly it's we're, if you can get that, we're willing to give up people's time if you make the education of your product free
Mm,
and
Yeah.
make it available. Make it something that that person can really become the best and that, at that area. And I think that's sometimes kind of a gap. Some people look at it as a line item, but it's a partnership.
Mhm.
If you get the people that's actually going to be knowledgeable about the product, they're going to be wanting to use it,
Yeah.
and that's also kind of an enabler as well. One of the things that kind of I want to mention as well that Tony also brought up as well, and Stan, you also mentioned on. It does mean these are organized crime as we mentioned, and they're investing. They're taking time and investment. They're investing in this because it
mm,
takes money to make money, which is one of the major statements of the value chains here. We're actually
Mhm.
organized crime are actually investing in development of their attack tools. They're looking at very specifically who to target and take advantage of. To your point about it's better to target somebody who will give you access to many versus doing them individually. So there's those organized criminals who even just specialize in targeting and access brokers. Then it's also the distribution where you've got into that affiliate program where those who are creating the cryptos may not want to put themselves. Maybe they're afraid that they're in countries where it's considered a crime, and they will actually
Mhm.
sell it off to those who will actually use it and abuse it in countries where it may not be considered a crime, where it's more of a business model. And then they have into the ability of how they can make sure they convert that into cash, which of course is cashing out and using things like multiple cryptocurrencies, buying things through loyalty cards, distribution models, trying to really convert that from.
Loyalty cards.
Yeah,
Yeah,
loyalty
that's
cards is still
fun,
a big
isn't it?
one. Is how they
Yeah.
cash out and pay through, because that becomes almost untraceable once you get it out. Once you don't know who's got that, the voucher number, and it can be significant as well. So this is really where there is a supply chain, there is a good mechanism, and that's why we're seeing organized crime and ransomware really take off in this report. I think it's significant.
Agreed.
Yeah, I
So
heard they're also, in terms of monetization, they're starting to use stablecoin instead of crypto coin because stablecoin being tied to fiat currencies is not as volatile, so they get their money's worth.
absolutely. And I did
Good
love a
investment
lot of. I
strategy.
loved. I'm going to kind of want to bring it to a summary here and get your kind of your main summaries from. But I'd like to. I mean, I'd like to. For we do have a lot of awesome people listening to the podcast. And I do want to kind of raise awareness and thank you to the Verizon Data Breach Investigations team who really put this together. This was 86 partners who worked together to really analyze hundreds of thousands of incidents to really narrow it down to really the ones that really make a good understanding. So there's Gabriel Bassett, David Highlander, Philip Lagos, Alex Pinto, and Suzanne Widup. And also, I did, a special thanks also noted in there to Dave Kennedy, who we've had on this the podcast before. So definitely, if you're interested in learning, go back and listen to the episode where we had Dave Kennedy from Trusted Security on the podcast, which we covered a lot about pen testing. And I really did like a lot of the Easter eggs in there, about the DeLorean and the
Yeah.
John McClane comment as well, which is always funny. So I do really like a lot of the funny commentary that they put to the report, because again, what that really does is it makes it fun. If it was a very serious report, you know, which it is, but I really like their ability to also put the interesting, fun comments in to really bring it back to enjoyable. So, Stan, I'd like to get any main key things that for anyone listening that you would recommend that they take away from the report.
No, I think the one thing, regardless of the size of the institution or company, is be diligent on your access, patch, patch, and patch again.
Mhm.
Um, and don't assume that technologies that have been in place for years that you have considered to be the MFA, whatever
Mhm.
it may be. Technology is designed and built by humans. Over time, high performance computing, things like Moore's Law have been broken by technology. We
Mm.
need to recognize the fact that it's built and designed by humans. So don't assume you are safe without having a clear understanding of what the associated threats might be.
Absolutely. And Tony,
And
uh,
just the humor in this report is
it's
made me
brilliant.
Yeah, the
excited
humor's
I love
about
it.
great. It
I
really
security
always
is.
guys.
love the
I like
humor.
that. I like that tongue in
There is
cheek.
a lot of humor in there for a fairly
Yeah.
dry topic.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
it takes the edge off. It takes the edge
yes.
off. It's very good. I like it.
So I'm always
Yeah,
looking
for
for
me, I
those.
mean,
Go ahead, Tony.
we've been around the block on this a few times, but again, it's people. People are still fallible, right? And so that's what causes data breaches. So invest in education, invest in awareness.
Mm,
That plus, again, it's blocking and tackling the basic hygiene, security hygiene, like password rotations and patching and
mhm,
stuff of that nature is just so very, very important. But again, the thing that piqued my interest is secure remote access for vendors and third parties. That's a massive ingress point. I think that's underserved by a
mhm.
lot of organizations, especially with work from home and moving to the cloud and everybody's remote. It's that remote access vector that's I think is just underserved personally. So that needs
Uh,
attention.
Absolutely agree. I think for me, really kind of go take a look at those top 13 kind of recommendations in the SMB section, because ultimately they apply to everybody. And if you get those done
Hmm.
really well, at least those basics, you do make it yourself, a much more difficult target. And it means, for attackers, they tend to move on to the more easier targets. So sometimes just being a little bit, step ahead, a little bit diligent on your security controls will definitely make the biggest difference. And again, for those listening in, definitely go and take a look at the report. There is a good, Verizon will always do a webinar on it as well, so watch out for the webinar,
Mm.
because they always talk about the data analytical side of things and the presentations and the forms and how they present the reports. So definitely look at that; it will help you. Make sure you read the section about how to actually understand the data as well, because it's definitely important to make sure you, as you're reading through, understanding what you're saying as well, because the representation is also important here in the report. So again, many thanks, Stan, Tony. It's been awesome having an episode. For the audience out there, again, tune in every 2 weeks for the 401 Access Denied, and make sure that you go back and listen to some of the other awesome podcasts as well. Stay safe, take care, and I will see you. I've got some exciting news for you coming weeks, so tune in, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone. Take care,
Thanks a
and goodbye.
lot.
Thank you very
Bye
much.
bye.